It's the Sports Peninsula podcast. Coming up, the Detroit Lions dispatched the Minnesota Vikings at Ford Field last Sunday 30-20, finishing the 2023 campaign with a franchise-best 12 wins on the season. The Lions have the third seed and will host the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football on NBC January 14th. Matthew Stafford returns to Detroit as Jared Goff leads the Lions into their first home playoff game at Ford Field. This is also the first home playoff game for the Lions since the 1993 season. We'll talk about the matchup with the Rams, highlight the season's successes, and discuss our views on the playoff field this season. Now here's your Sports Peninsula team. Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Peninsula podcast. My name is Dave Drzezinski-Drew, and it is Tuesday, January 9th. We're only about 5 days away from the first Lions home game playoff game since 1993, as we mentioned in the intro. I'm excited to talk about that, excited to bring our roundtable here as well. Coach Andy Shield, the Marine City Mariners. First, how you doing?
Drew, doing really, really well. I'm very excited I will get to be in attendance at this game. And, and just like our wonderful comrade here, Brad, and his fine son, Gavin, will as well. Really wish you could be there too, my friend. And I mean that sincerely. I just don't have anything I can do that about. But maybe if I carried a large duffel bag and see I needed a change of clothes, we could stuff you in there. But
it worked in Lefebvre Hall back in the day on campus.
Right.
Some other goods in there.
I just got to pass you through like one of those airport things. We have to do that with all of our goods, like our pockets and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't know if that X-ray machine, you'll trigger that X-ray machine off or not. But if you think it's worth a try, I guess we can talk later. But
well, yeah, we'll have to discuss it later as the week progresses.
This is a very exciting time. And hey, yes, we have 3 Western Michigan University graduates here, and that is our affiliation to our undergraduate degree, and it always is. I don't own any Michigan or Michigan State's clothing. I own Western Michigan clothing, and I try to keep it real like that. But go blue, Team 144. And I tell you what, and I know we need to get going here. But this goes out to all of our viewers as well, fellows. That's one of the finest college football teams. They're one of the top 50 all-time college football teams. They're amazing. They're amazing. Their dominance was amazing.
15-0, unbelievable. I mean, and great playoffs wins against Alabama and Washington. It was outstanding season, just outstanding season. Coach, we're wearing blue, and you're not wearing blue today, but there's a reason for that. Talk about your shirt.
You know what? We're a football family. I've got a lot of football influences in my life, and my first football influence is my father, Dave Shield, who was a 1965 graduate of Harper Woods High School, and this year in 2023, the Harper Woods Pioneers won the Division IV state championship. So I tell you what, this is the one I'm deciding to wear here. Not because I forgot about the podcast or anything like that. It's because I wanted to get a quick hit circuit in, and this was the shirt that I was wearing, and I done forgot to change it. So. But this one, I guess, is a shout out to the Harper Woods Pioneer High School football team. Jacob Oden, who was a starting defensive back and wide receiver on this football team, helped break up a pass in the end zone to win that state championship, has dressed for 2 more football games since then. The Rose Bowl and the CFP National Championship game.
Wow.
He has won in the same football season a high school state championship and a Division I CFP national championship.
That's incredible.
So kudos to the Oden family, Oden ball, Oden football. Here we go. Let's talk about those Lions, but enough of the maroon shirted guy.
How do you top that, Uper, Brad? Coach Shield had a lot going on there. But
that's hard. I'm not trying to top them. That's amazing.
I'll be signing autographs in the lobby. But
yeah, I would tell you, before we get into Detroit, because our Broncos didn't get as far as we want them to go.
No.
We were watching Michigan football, and that team 144. And I would tell you the championship happened weeks before. I would tell you the Saturday after Thanksgiving, beating the Buckeyes from Ohio State. That was the game.
That was
these
huge.
other one, yeah. they get a lot of credit for beating Alabama and Washington, but beating Ohio State, that's the crown and the jewel in my mind from that 15-0 team 144. So
yeah, hard to argue that.
So now we'll get to Detroit. So I have had this. What I want to do is make a toast out of my 1983
let's get a close up
Central. How do I do this? Central Division champion Stein.
I could cry. That's beautiful.
Right?
I love that
Monty
50th
Clark,
anniversary
Billy
patch.
Sims. I want to do a toast. Here's some Upper Hand Light.
Okay.
Bell's Brewery in Escanaba, Michigan. Shout out to Bell's from Kalamazoo and Escanaba. I want to make a toast to Sheila Ford Hamp and what she has done for this fan base. And
Go ahead.
And what she did, her first call to Chris Spielman. This isn't over, fellas. This isn't over, but it's a good ride.
I will drink to that. My water in my Marvin Jones and Ziggy Ansah souvenir cup, guys. Can you believe that? How about that?
Times have changed. Zero sugar can issued by them as well. But I join you, comrades.
I love it. All right, guys. You know what? The Uper said it. We got to talk about the Lions. Okay, we will. Awesome season. We're not going to talk too much about this Vikings game because there's a lot more to talk about coming up here. But 30-20, the Lions take care of business. Guys, some people question that they played their starters in this game. In seeing 87 go down and have to get carted off the field justifies that to an extent. I do understand it. But this team had a shot of getting the second seed. And coach, the Eagles did them a favor. They handed the Giants that game. They weren't that far away from slipping back into that number 2 seed, but Dallas took care of business against Washington. But a sound win. The game was close, but it was never really in doubt. But just to get a quick synopsis and feel for how you guys saw that one, Coach, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on the win?
Yeah, I think it's the right end of the season. A 30-20 win over a maligned Minnesota Viking football team, and one that knew that maybe things weren't gonna be of consequence this year for them. But they did a nice job. As far as playing the players, I think it was the right thing to do personally. I would love to have seen Teddy Bridgewater get a couple of snaps ceremoniously, because it's the last regular season game of his career. Mm-hmm. And a guy that's given a lot to this, his heart and soul and his legs to this game. Yeah. That's not because they needed to, Jared needs to stay strong and sharp. He needed to have some throws that we needed to see him, that's just good practice for him. We don't want to have him get out of those rhythms. That's his beautiful music, are those third down throws that he can really rip through. And it seems like a great frequency. And he had a couple of them. He had a couple of real nice ones, which was good to see. We ran the ball fairly. There was times we had a little, it was a little bit different there. We know that they have a great defensive front. In regards to, Sam Laporta's injury, I know that just breaks our heart. This is a wonderful kid, and really maybe the new most preeminent weapon, at least in the NFC. I think we can really say, let's move over Mr. Kelsey. Let's move over Mr. Kittle. Let's move over and allow this guy. We have a new Mount Rushmore tight end in the NFL, and his name's Sam Laporta. And I think there's truth to that.
Oh, yeah.
I think we're fortunate. I don't think this injury, it's an injury. He is injured. I'm not saying it's a boo-boo and there's nothing to worry about. But, we had no Brock Wright. He was not available for this game. We had to let Anthony Fursker walk in order to make room for some other players to become active. So we had James Mitchell, who made a fine catch and a nice play.
Yeah, he did.
In that game. And Sam Laporta. And that's who was available to us in this one. So, I mean, you know, is it a shame? Is that what we wanted to see? No. Did we want to see Brian Branch ding his wrist? No. We didn't want to see those things. But the Lions had things they were playing for, and that was very legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And they, I just would much rather do it that way than rest guys and be out of sync in a game that we do not want to be out of sync of.
I think you make great points. And again, I get people being concerned about the injuries, but it's like someone like Jimmy Johnson said it best in the pregame. He said, someone's got to play. He's like, you know, somebody's got to play the game. And that's just how it is. It's a hyperextension of the knee. We'll see. It's Tuesday. I would say Friday, Saturday, we'll probably have a better idea about Laporta. Coach Campbell didn't rule him out. So that's encouraging. But yeah, Branch getting hurt was a concern, but he was back right in the next series. So that, or right at the half, I should say, in the third quarter. So that was good. But yeah, great points, Coach. No question. And a big win. Uper Brad, your thoughts? The Lions, 12 wins. They're 12-5, but they still tied that 91 team for most wins in a season for this franchise. Your thoughts on the game in the season there?
Well, on the game, that 12th win is on point for where this rebuild should be. You know, this is year 3. Things have gone right for Brad Holmes, for Dan Campbell, for us as a fan base, and for the men on that roster. So, you know, they've met expectations, and our expectations should be high. So I'm couldn't be more thrilled with what these men have done. And I know I speak that for every Lions fan out there. So, you know, as far as the season, expectations have been met. Expectations can be exceeded in these next few weeks. And I do think they're ready. I think this is the team, like this team doesn't sit people down just cause this roster plays football, and you're going to take it for better or for worse. Injuries happen in the NFL. It was a gut punch. I mean, it was, you know, we sat here in the basement and just we're quiet for a while. Like, oh, okay, you know, and let's not forget about Khalif Raymond as well. Like there's damage that happened on that field. So, but that's football. And I do love the resolve that I've heard from Coach Campbell, from the players, about what to do next. And they're not hesitating. They're not calling radio shows and whining. No, they're gonna work their game plan. And the game plan is for the next man to step up. And we can all hope Sam Laporta comes back sooner than we thought he would during that game last Sunday.
Yeah, agree with that. So I mean, I put a percentage to it. I mean, flip a coin. I mean, who knows? You know, hyperextended, so that tells me there's no damage, but it tells me those ligaments are good and stretched too. So it's gonna come down to, you know, how it's responded, how much it's tightened up in the next couple of days, and then how can he tolerate the pain? Can he work with a brace of some kind on? Who knows?
He's young, guys. He's young, right? These young kids.
Yeah.
They bounce back.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, we want to definitely be, you want to be careful, but obviously, I mean, the guy's going to want to play, and this is a huge game for him personally, for this team, for this franchise, for everybody. So we're going to get into that, but before we get into the Rams game and start talking about that one, let's kind of just go over how this season played out, guys, and just start looking at this defense. On average, they allowed just under 89 yards a game, which is pretty stout. That's not anything. Anytime you can hold your opponents under 100 yards rushing on average or in a game, you're doing something right. Passing yards against, not quite as good, 268.4. Certainly there were times they got gashed pretty good. But that didn't often. That happens though at times. And Coach, maybe you can expound on this a little bit. Typically, if an offense is high scoring and a defense has kind of a niche where, in this case, Detroit's good against the run, you are going to give up some passing yards because you're putting your opponents in situations where they often are one-dimensional. So they're going to get theirs. Is there any truth to that with this Detroit team that you're seeing this year?
Well, I think, in the new style football, which is, and it's not new. I mean, it's been quite some time. It's been a passers league. It's been a passing game at the NFL level. With the protections that are in place for quarterbacks, for the protections that are in place for the receiver, not just the defenseless receiver, but not being able to check and bump and press beyond 5 yards. Playing defensive back and defending the pass in this game is tricky in of itself. And you do have to have some scheme dynamics that address that. And what we do, we're a better run defense than we are a passing defense. Unlike the offense, which has really shown fairly tremendous balance, whether it's a potent passing game and attack, they're like just a stealthy, lethal passing game would be between our receiving threats and Jared Goff, and a phenomenal run game with our offensive line and any of the backs that we put in there. So, I mean, yeah, I think there's some things that lend to it. Just that really, it's just so hard to defend the pass. I think, by and large, the numbers are just much larger on the passing level than they are on the running level. It would be a bigger concern if we were giving up $1.25 on the ground. That would be a bigger concern. 268 through the air. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that we're seeing, this is the day and age where we see 375, 400 routinely from some of the bigger gunslingers in the league. So there's no doubt we need to improve our pass defense. And I think a lot of that has to do with solidifying some player capabilities on the back end, as well as added pass rushers, which is we've talked about before. But yeah, I think I do think just the very nature of how this game is protected at the NFL level makes it difficult to defend the pass. And when you might not do that the greatest, in the first place, it's going to show up sometimes.
Yeah, no, that great point, Coach. Thank you. And Uper Brad, let's talk a little more. 40 sacks on the year for the team. 5 of those came in the last 2 weeks from Aiden Hutchinson alone. So that kind of backs Coach's point up there. That's not a tremendous amount of sacks for a team. It's not terrible, but it's I would say it's middle to lower middle. But they've certainly stepped up in the last couple of weeks. 16 interceptions this year, and overall 23rd in points against. Again, some of that is a byproduct of having a high-scoring offense, and the defense was hit and miss at times. But obviously, this is a 12-5 team, so they did a lot of things right. But overall, your thoughts on this defense and certainly how they're stacked up going into the playoffs?
Yeah, I don't want to criticize a defense on a 12-5 football team. Definitely the weaker half. I guess it's the weaker third of our offense, defense, and special teams. It's probably where the frustration lies for all of us when we were watching football this year is the opportunistic piece just wasn't consistent. The turnovers, the sacks, Coach Campbell talks about those coming in bunches, which, all right, let's continue that because they're coming in bunches right now. And so Aiden Hutchinson claims to feel as good as he has all year after 17 games and 18 weeks of football plus preseason. So good on the training staff to keep guys like him in that type of condition. We're getting the best we can out of the Anzalones of the world. Jack Campbell had a great game last week. The cornerbacks are that's my concern heading into Sunday, right? Like of what these receivers, the capabilities of the receivers that we're going up against and the defense that we're putting on the field. But hey, you're 12-5. We're all 0-0 now, and we have the home game. So when the opportunity is there, you take it. When that ball is up there, don't drop it.
Yeah.
You gotta win this turnover battle. And that's the challenge that's ahead. So, this is it.
I hear you, man. Great points, guys. And yeah, I agree with you, Brad, that as long as they're creating turnovers and still able to score, at minimum 25 points a game, they're in good shape. The Lions are a tough team to play against. There's no doubt about that. I'm sure you could say about every team, but not every team can do that. The teams that are able to stop offenses typically can't put up 20 a game. We've seen that. It's hard to get that synergy. There's teams in the playoffs right now. Dallas is one of them. Miami's another one. You don't want to play them at home necessarily, but on the road, they're like a Jekyll and Hyde team. A team like, I'm not trying to talk them up, but it is what it is. Detroit, Baltimore, Philly, Frisco, they're good at home. They're also good on the road. They're above 500 on the road. They don't care where they play. So I really like that about this Lions team too. They're not afraid of the road. Certainly they didn't win every road game, but they won some big road games. They won at Tampa, they won at Green Bay, and they won at Minnesota. They can win on the road. Kansas City. I can go on and on, right? So, but let's talk about these offensive players, quick, guys, before we get into this Rams game. Jared Goff season, coach, 4,500 yards, almost 4,600 yards, 67% completion percentage, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, a 97.9 QBR rating. That's I will admit it again. I never thought Jared Goff would do this. This was an amazing season for him, and it ain't over yet. Your thoughts on Jared Goff?
Well, just quite simply, I mean, you take the old quarterback out of the equation, and some of the years that he put up in regards to statistical output. This is the finest year of a Lions quarterback ever. And really, and he's taken he's done things that Matt Stafford never did here, and that's win 12 football games. I mean, that's happened 3 times in 90 years, and he is one of the pure form leaders of that. He's cool as a cucumber. The quarterback in your city is going to always receive criticism. Jared Goff is not immune to that, because we're human beings and we have attributes. He's not Fran Tarkenton. Okay, that's not necessarily an indictment. It's just that's not who he is. Okay, so we can't point fingers in that he's not going to beat you with his feet. He can make a throw that not many quarterbacks can make consistently and accurately, and that's moving to his right. He's very fluid in doing it, and rolling that way. It's very comfortable to him. I mean, he can step and rip through a pass as well as anyone in this league. It's a guy that we should be extending. I'm trying to learn more about guaranteed money and how you can protect that and those kinds of things. Should it be somewhere just, I guess, in the ballpark of numbers of 4 years and $200 million? I would do that. And we're talking about 50 mil. Not all of that's going to be guaranteed, obviously. Maybe a 2-year guarantee or something like that. And really, that's just fair term when we're talking that kind of dollar amount, because that, anything more than that is overextending, and Jared Goff would know that himself. But I am not comfortable, watching what I saw last night, which was 2 big-time quarterbacks that are going to be in the area in which we're going to draft. I just think the guy that we have now is superior to that. And I think there'll be another time in which we need to look to replace him.
Yeah, and Hendon Hooker is on this team and on the bench, 3rd-round pick, and minus a knee injury from 2 years ago. Hendon Hooker is probably in the top 10 of the draft last year. He was outstanding.
Yeah, true.
And so, yeah, I think it's very safe to give Jared Goff a 4-year deal, knowing you've got Hendon Hooker there in the wings waiting, and that would be an outstanding situation for him to learn, get better, get more reps in practice, etc., and see what happens. But yeah, I agree. Outstanding year. Brad, any other thoughts on Jared Goff? from your view?
You know, I sit there in amazement sometimes when you're watching a quarterback in complete control of the offense. It's a beautiful thing, and he is in complete control of this offense. There's nothing that gets out of. I mean, yes, if he gets pushed out of the pocket and he's got to run, it isn't pretty. But other than that, and he doesn't have to do that either, right? Like he can step away from pressure,
yep,
and deliver a dart. So it's just been my pleasure to watch Jared Goff compete on Sunday afternoons, because the way he's competing shows me he is putting in some tremendous work Monday through Saturday. And he's been doing it now for 3 years. And so this is our quarterback, and I'm thrilled.
You know, the first year Dan Campbell coached, you know, they started out with 0-10-1, and then they ended end of the last 7 games they were 3-3-1. So Jared Goff got pretty hot that second half too. He had a rough first half of that year, played a couple decent games, then started struggling, looked like he was fighting some injuries too, and then that second half he stepped up. Last year he was very good, and he was really good in the second half. So with the whole team, they finished 9-8. This year 12-5. There's Jared Goff's stats. I don't think I need to add anymore. You guys covered it.
And if we think back about 3 years ago, that they were finding their way.
Yeah,
they fired their offensive coordinator halfway through that season. Yeah. Anthony Lynn wasn't doing the job, and Jared Goff got right when Anthony Lynn exited stage right.
That is a valid point. That is a valid point. And Coach Campbell was calling plays, and I know Coach Johnson and some others were helping out too. And Coach Johnson ends up being the OC. And yeah, no coincidence. Jared Goff takes off. It's good stuff, guys. Let's talk about the running game and the O-line. Looking at David Montgomery, he broke 1,000 yards this year. He had 1,015, 13 rushing touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs nearly hit the 1,000-yard mark. That's the only thing I was really disappointed about in that game, was he wasn't able to get that. But he got 949, 10 touchdowns on the ground, 1 in the air. Great season, 1,200-plus yards of total offense from scrimmage. Outstanding rookie season. Sky's the limit for that young man. And then let's talk about Craig Reynolds. He didn't carry a whole lot this year, but he had 41 carries for 179 and a touchdown. That's a pretty good clip. That's definitely over 4 yards a carry. He certainly is good.
Heck of a block.
Oh yeah. The Tampa Bay game, the St. Brown touchdown. Hey, you know, before we get into this though, I did want to point out Jared Goff did motion out to his left in that game on Sunday, and he threw a bullet. And I think that was the Mitchell catch, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on that, but he made a nice throw. I was like, Jared Goff can go to the left. I was like, whoa, look out. So it's definitely not his forte, no doubt about that. But it was nice to see that he was able to do that. But Brad, I'll start with you. This team they have 12 wins, and most of those, even though Jared Goff's stats are gaudy, those games were won in the trenches. And when that offensive line was right and as healthy as they could be, which wasn't often, but they're as healthy as they're going to be right now going to the playoffs. But man, this O-line and this running game just drove it. And by the fourth quarter of most games, they were imposing their will on teams. Brad, your thoughts on their performance?
That's why I have confidence in this postseason. It's the O-line. I mean, these running backs have the talent, they have the skill, but they have the wherewithal to know to come to Detroit to play football. David Montgomery, he had options. He wanted to come here. And I know a lot of it had to do with the guys in front of him. He didn't have that at Chicago, but he has it here. He saw it. He's smart enough to know. Jamal Williams broke every touchdown record we had. Got 1 touchdown this year.
I know, yeah.
In New Orleans. Maybe he's older. No. He doesn't have the offensive line in front of him. And he was hurt, et cetera, et cetera. But I would tell you, I'm not taking anything away from these 3 guys. Like the work they put in and the talent Jahmyr Gibbs that we can just see. Like you could just, it's going to be spectacular. Some of these highlight reels we're going to be able to watch on YouTube when we're 20 years from now, because we already have some after 1 year. And so the talent's there, but it's the structure of this offense, starting with the offensive line, starting with the head, the offensive line coach. It's just it's a team. It's all 11 on on that offensive side of the ball that makes it so spectacular that whatever happens in these next few weeks, I'm not going to lose hope because of what's going on this offensive side of the ball.
Very well said. Very well said. Yeah. And then, again, they built in the trenches, and they won their games in the trenches. Coach, I know you're a proponent of that. I mean, you made a believer out of me a couple of years ago when you said Penei Sewell is the real deal. That's who we need. We didn't think he'd be there. He was there. You were adamant about the Lions taking him. They did so. He's been great. Talk about the offensive line performance.
I mean, it's where it's the foundational element of the Detroit Lions, probably to the core, is that they're that offensive line. They are let out by that offensive line. Really, with the other 48 players are behind them. Really, and really, when we talk about the offensive line, I mean, we can talk about it being Sewell, Glasgow, Ragnow, Jackson, Decker. We can talk about it being that, but that's not necessarily just what it is. I mean, a lot of these guys have been hurt at times. Yeah. We've Awasika has played big roles. Colby Sorsdal's played a big role.
Skip.
Dan Skipper is the sixth lineman. And by the way, I mean, this man is gaining some love. I am not kidding. I'm not messing around. There were 3 women in different parts of the stadium with number 70 jerseys. I made sure to look, and it said Skipper on the back.
Not Keith Thorney.
And I mean, they were. I mean, when he was announced as his number being eligible, I mean, there were 4 or 5 of the largest,
Sure.
Celebrate. The crowd got some of the loudest they ever got, last Sunday, and it was a very lively crowd. So, let's see. I'd be remiss to eliminate that guy, from being discussed as part of this line as well. 24 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah,
between those 3 players.
Mm-hmm.
We also can add a 25th with JMO's reverse. So I mean, that's doing some work. I think that's 25 touchdowns on the ground. Jared Goff, who was the only quarterback that played a game this year,
30.
had 30. We talked about being balanced. 25, 30. It's pretty balanced.
Yeah, a couple grand on the ground, 4,500 in the air. And proportionately, that is balanced. I mean, it really is. I mean, you're talking 300 yards to every 100 yard. So yeah, that's very balanced.
See you later, Coach Moore and Coach Fonts. Great Lakes offense be Dan. What was that?
That there was the greatest running back in NFL history, and a couple great wide receivers laying out for about 80 passes that year and making great plays. I know you guys know that. There's no question. Yeah, good job, guys.
Hey, let's not get Scott Mitchell mad at us. All right.
We don't need that. We don't need that.
No, kudos to him, man. I mean, that guy's got a place in history.
Hey, he played very well that year. He was outstanding that season.
Heck yeah.
Hopes were high. Guys, let's talk about we talked about Goff and the passing game a little bit. Let's talk about the receivers right now. We'll go through that real quick here, and it starts and ends with Amon-Ra St. Brown. 119 catches, 1,500 yards, and 10 touchdowns. If I'm not mistaken, he, in his first 3 years, statistically, right now, is actually topped Calvin Johnson at this point in his career. I'm not saying he's better than Calvin Johnson, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is a hell of a football player. We're seeing a special receiver who isn't the tallest, isn't the fastest, doesn't make highlight reel ESPN highlight catches all the time, but does everything well, is about as meticulous. Coach, you got to appreciate a guy like this who will catch 202 passes off a jugs machine after every practice, just to be better than the next guy. I mean, that's just dedication to your craft right there. He's been amazing. We look at Sam Laporte. We talked about him. He had, in his rookie year, a tight end, 86 catches, 889 yards, and 10 touchdowns. My goodness. I mean, so you can see 20 of Goff's 30 touchdowns just went to those two gentlemen right there. Going forward, Josh Reynolds had a big year. And guys, I wanted to ask you about this because I noticed it, and the announce team was kind of not sure why they were doing it, but when you thought they would just run it up the gut or even take a knee, they were making these quick flare passes out to Josh Reynolds. And I was wondering, is there something, does he have like a bonus coming or something? And apparently that's what it was.
It absolutely was.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that. And I hope he got it, because he certainly played his ass off this year. 40 catches, 608 yards, and
600 yards.
Yeah.
600 yards was the incentive kicker.
Awesome.
They did it on purpose. And I'm not trying to interrupt or and interject on anybody or anything like that. But and here's why I like that. I mean, some organizations are trying out there to save money, right?
They bench players.
Wasn't there someone's talking about, I don't know if I think it's the Chargers owner, is actually like counting printer paper usage and that kind of thing. We have coaches out there trying to get our players their paid incentives.
Yeah. Big
guys are going to want to come play for guys like that.
That's a great point. Brad, what were you going to say?
Yeah, it was a recruiting tool is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But Josh Reynolds, they love this man. There were two incentives he was that he was gunning for. One was the 600 yards, but the other one was 6 touchdowns. So there were 2 throws in that fourth quarter that he in the end zone. So I hope he's not hurt about not getting both of them, because that was real special to see what they were doing at the end. And I appreciated Coach Campbell going to Coach O'Connell after that game and explaining what was going on. And O'Connell had no issue with it. So, yeah, that's just a culture thing that will resonate throughout the NFL when free agents are looking around.
Yeah, it was good stuff. Like I said, I figured that I hadn't heard about, but thank you guys. That's good. That's good stuff. And absolutely, it's a recruiting tool. I mean, that just fires me up just talking about it. We talked about Khalif Raymond. He had 35 catches and 89 yards and a touchdown. And when we talk about Reynolds and Raymond, good production, but very timely production. When they caught, there was a span, I think the first 5 games when Josh Reynolds caught a pass, it was either for a touchdown or a first down. That's it. That's what he did, which is pretty impressive. Khalif Raymond, there were several times this year, most times he only had 2 or 3 catches a game, but they were always a key play. It was a key moment. It was to keep a drive going, to get a key first down, whatever the case was. And he was terrific on special teams against the Vikings this past week, which was awesome. Hopefully he's able to play. I'm not so sure about that one. Laporte has looked worse, but again, what do I know? I'm not a doctor, but at the end of the day, hopefully he can come back. I don't know if you guys have heard anything on him or not, but
I had fortunately got to be pretty close to him post game. And he was walking up the incline of the tunnel and pretty comfortable. There was no limp. It's a classified hyperextension, and you can talk to a lot of coaches, a lot of sports med guys and gals. That hyperextension, it's not a good thing. It's an injury. Just like, you and I were talking about, earlier before we started recording. It is an injury.
Yeah.
It's not a little bump on the head, so to speak. That's a poor analogy because that can lead to concussions and being insensitive, and that's a big deal too. But anyway, it can be something you can play through and recover from rather quickly. It's you alluded to it. It's all about working that range of motion, that comfort working through that range of motion. We're not talking about a laterally unstable thing. Those patella tendons and the leg not being able to overextend anymore, that has to be protected. That can be somewhat protected by adjusting those DonJoy, knee braces.
Yeah.
Which they can do easier for someone that has suffered a hyperextension or a meniscus injury, then that's why you see those guys bounce back relatively quick. It's the medial collateral and the ACL that are the ones that are very hard to protect. So I'm fingers crossed. I love this kid. I mean, he's one of our friends, Drew. Has kind of become friends with him, and he's a frequenter of Freddie the Pizza Man down in Melvindale. Him and his family go there on Saturdays, evidently, quite a bit.
Oh, that's nice.
He's a great kid. You can just tell through the interactions, like when he caught that pass and broke that NFL record for a rookie. Just how he received the praise from his teammates, you can just tell from on the jumbotron. He's a very genuine kid. We want to protect him because we want him here long term. I'm not trying to just be a hype machine, but I do think he's a Mount Rushmore of the NFL tight end. And we want to protect that, but doggone it, do we need it too? Because I tell you what, there's going to be two real good defensive tackles burying in on that run game. Two real good ones. And we're going to want to have our two-way little receiving game going too.
You got it, Coach, and no doubt about that. And we'll be diving into that in a few minutes. No question, I promise. And then, Brad, we got Jameson Williams. He contributed this year more in the second half, which was nice. 24 catches, 354 yards, a couple touchdowns. That end around he had in a couple of weeks ago. That's the rushing touchdown against Minnesota, I believe that was. So again, he found the end zone 3 times, and we're seeing a little more every week. So that's a positive. And overall, like you said, Brad, this is 12-5 NFC North champions. They're the 3rd seed in the NFC playoffs. But overall, your thoughts on that receiver room and how you're feeling about him going to the playoffs?
Well, I mean, just on Jameson, that young man drips talent. I mean, when he's on the field, the speed that's just, you're not taught that. It's a God-given ability that he has. None of us have seen what we want to see because it looks so good. So there's work to be done there. And so, I'm thrilled I'm thrilled he's in the building he's in, because I think if this was a different type of team, that thing could get sideways. But he's with some leaders. He's with Amon-Ra St. Brown every day in that receiving room. And that's gonna rub off. And so I see what Brad Holmes saw when he made that selection. That wasn't just a flyer. He wants that speed on on the field. So, once again, 12-5. The strength of this team is the offense. We got three parts. The offense is number one, and so there's a lot of great parts to this. When we're coming up, whatever defensive coordinator is working on our film for Sunday's game, he's not sleeping much, because maybe he doesn't know how we're going to beat him. He doesn't know where we're going to go, but he knows we're going to go. We're going to score. And I'm glad we don't have to come up with a game plan to defend the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, you're right about that, Brad. And we're talking, that's Mike LaFleur would be the offense, is the OC, but Raheem Morris is the DC over there in Los Angeles. So that may be the guy you're referring to. And let's talk about a playoff game. Gentlemen, we've been doing this podcast is 6 years old now. And this is the first time we've been able to talk about the playoffs like this. Very excited about this. So I'm going to try and contain my emotions, to be a professional about this, but this is huge. This is really exciting. Lions, Rams. There's a few underlying storylines in this game, I think, guys. I'm going to take the graphic off here. I understand their quarterback used to play in Detroit, Matt Stafford. I mean, you named your dog after him, Brad, for goodness sake.
I love my dog.
We love Stafford, but on Sunday, he's the enemy. No question about that. Let's face it, Matt Stafford went to the Rams and did what Jared Goff just fell short of doing, was win a Super Bowl. Conversely, Jared Goff in 3 years has done what it took Matt Stafford. Well, Matt Stafford played in Detroit for 12 years and could not do what Jared Goff did this year, which was lead this team to a division title and a home playoff game. Now, it's not a Super Bowl, but it's a precursor, potentially. Sean McVay is the coach of the Rams. He casted off Jared Goff. He might have a small chip on his shoulder about that. I don't know. I would. I think most people would. Brad Holmes used to be the assistant general manager in LA. Now he's running the Detroit Lions. There is so much going on. And I think in every game I've seen coach on TV, even the road games, the announce crew is always, and I mean always, complimented on the crowd noise and the fan support. You think it might raise a couple octaves in Ford Field on Sunday?
It is going to be really emotional in there, and on a lot of levels. And I know you are both competitive guys. I probably got a minor problem with it. I know it's why I've tried to stay in competitive sports to the age of 50 as a coach. It's part that I try to get out of my head because, I can get pretty worked up over things. It's just out of the spirit of competition. It's just kind of how I get my motor running and heading out on the highway, so to speak. So, putting all that kind of aside, this isn't the Matt Stafford game. It's not. It's the Jared Goff game. From our lens, it's the Jared Goff game. Matt Stafford was a wonderful quarterback here for 12 years, and he was a phenomenal individual performer, and we had a couple of decent teams that he was on.
Yep.
Decent teams that he was on. The guy that we've had here has and I know the sample size is smaller, of course, but his winning percentage is better. And he's just put us into a position that's just different than what Matt Stafford was. And oh, by the way, Matt Stafford was beloved in Detroit. People were shedding tears and were, calling him the Detroit Rams when he got traded there.
Mm-hmm.
He had the life of Riley as a Detroit Lion and chose to ask for a trade. Jared Goff was thrown out on the curb and sent to Detroit. Go over on that friggin' dirt, grime, salt-roaded, gray-skied place and die. That's what he was told. That's what the Rams told him.
Yeah.
So
and even before that, Coach McVay said you're not even good enough to play.
no,
sit you.
they put in Wofford or whatever. That's the, I think Baker's back up now with the Bucks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the guy.
Yeah, Wolford. Yep.
Wolford. Sorry.
Yep.
There's a lot of emotion, and I'm not going to be a guy that's, I could go there and just be kind of dumb about it, and it isn't. I mean, no one hates Matt Stafford, and if you do hate Matt Stafford, something personal must be an issue for you because, he's not that type of a guy.
Yeah.
Now, I will have a burn in my core for 48 to 72 hours if he comes in here and picks us apart and wins. I'll not be happy about that.
I don't want to think about that.
And will it change my feelings and thoughts of Matt Stafford as Detroit Lions quarterback? No. But I will have less feelings for, him today. That's for sure. And, I'm concerned about that because we just talked about what do we not do the greatest? We don't defend the pass the best. And they've had some Johnny-come-latelys, and they've got some receiving threats and some things that we need to be concerned about as well.
Yeah.
But in my mind, guys, this is not the Matt Stafford game. I'm not going to say welcome back. I mean, you will always be welcome back, Matt. You always will be. But we may not make you feel too welcome come Sunday, 8:00 in Detroit, Michigan.
He's gonna feel
I
it.
hope he doesn't get. I'm not advocating booing him.
Mhm.
That kind of will. I
It'll
want it to be out. I want him to be treated like every other quarterback in the NFL, the other 31, because he's not a Detroit Lion anymore.
Nope.
And I do feel that. I mean, you and I are both monitors of the social media platform X. Brad, you are as well. The tone has changed. This isn't all smooches. We love you, Matthew. That's not what it's like anymore. Not what I'm seeing. And I'm a one pride follower, just like you guys are.
They've realized now he's that we're in good shape,
He's
and
the enemy.
yeah, he's the enemy. Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Coach. I don't dislike Matt Stafford. I don't even blame him for asking to get out after 12 years. And I don't think it was I think it seemed to be more of a situation where he was kind of tired of the merry-go-round of coaches that he dealt with, and having come up Matt Patricia. I guess I can't blame the guy, but he never gave MCDC a shot, and maybe shame on him. But he got his ring, so good for him. But don't want to see that on Sunday, Brad. Brad,
No,
you were at that game in '93. I know you've been to a lot of games, but how special is this one going to be when you get to Ford Field for you?
Oh, it's spectacacalar. I mean, a lot happens in 30 years. I never thought I would have left the state of Michigan, but had, and career took me otherwise. But the Lions always kept me grounded in Michigan. So I'm forever grateful for that organization, and for the times we got to spend watching these games and talking about them, and and this thing coming on. So there's just so much for this game on Sunday, and I think we should refer to number 9 with the Los Angeles Rams by his true name, John Stafford, John Matthew Stafford. I mean, let's just call him John, and wish him well when he leaves. But what we saw, I mean, this is an Aaron Glenn game. We hadn't blitzed much except for these last few games, these last 5. Like, you've got to get to John Stafford. You have to get to him. You've got to get home. You cannot almost get John Stafford. You got to get in his face, make him make a mistake, and capitalize when the opportunity's there. Because we know there's going to be an opportunity. And that you just can't let it slip through your fingers.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be at that game. Doggone it.
You bet. That's awesome, Brad. Yeah, and getting into that, you kind of segued perfectly in what I wanted to talk about next, which is what do you need to do to stop this Rams offense? And Coach, I think Brad touched on a big part of it. And you're right. They didn't blitz a lot until the second, maybe even the last quarter of the season, last 4 or 5 games, but they have been more effective, and it did kind of jumpstart that pass rush a little bit. Certainly with 97, he certainly has had a fine last couple of games. But Coach, this is also a quarterback in Stafford that's a lot like Goff in the sense of the footwork. If you put pressure on Dak, he was able to slip away a little bit. You put pressure on Lamar Jackson, he kind of laughs at you and does what he wants to do. You put pressure on Matt Stafford or John Stafford, right? He's gonna throw it when he doesn't want to. And we know, and this is still true, that when Stafford doesn't have time and tries to thread the needle a little bit, he's going to make mistakes. Coach, what do you do to make sure that Stafford doesn't have any fourth quarter magic in him, because it's going to be too far gone, hopefully?
No, I'm gonna lend some strategy to what we saw last night at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas, and how Coach Jesse Minter and that staff took on Michael Penix and that vaunted Washington offense. Kalen DeBoer is an outstanding offensive mind. One of Chris Creighton's former offensive coordinators with the Eastern Michigan Eagles, at a given point in time. Yeah. But Kalen DeBoer has a great offense out there. That was a juggernaut. And what they did is they pressured Michael Penix. They didn't rush Michael Penix. And I'm going to ask you gentlemen a question. And this is just me speaking from my own defensive philosophy, because I truly believe this is how we should go about going after Matt Stafford. What would you rather have? A defense with a lot of sacks, or facing a quarterback that was inaccurate? Which would you rather have?
Wow, that's a good question.
These would be, after an entire game, taking into the impact of an entire game. Would you rather face an inaccurate quarterback or have a bunch of sacks?
Go ahead, Brad.
Quarterback uncomfortable, knock him around, hit him, and that's where I'd go.
I think you want an inaccurate quarterback. I think you want one that's pressured. I think you want one that's hurried. I think you want one that you're going to make throw when you want him to throw, not when he wants to throw. And you're going to see him miss throws. We're going to see him throw the ball towards defenders. We are going to see him throw the ball away. We are going to see him stop the clock, and we're going to see him put his own offense, in a lot of second and third and longs. And I think that's what you want. I think that is what you want. We have a home run hitter in Aiden Hutchinson. He is the home run hitter in the pass rush game. We have a guy that's pretty dynamic in James Houston. He's got the ghost move that he's really good at, which is, that's kind of one of these, dynamic, movement, pass rush, techniques that is very effective. Outside of that, we're very pedestrian when it comes to putting a body on a quarterback and taking someone down. That being said, we can create problems for Matthew Stafford, and that's very important. We have to support a defensive backfield that has been maligned by injuries and has had a lot of bodies come in and out of it. We need to support them by allowing balls to be thrown more towards their direction rather than John can fire, and make happen, which we know and have seen with our own eyes for a dozen years here as Lions fans. We need to make him feel uncomfortable. That being said, he does not need to be on the ground with the ball 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. I think that's unrealistic to expect that, especially from this group. Maybe in future groups, it'll look differently depending on what we're able to acquire in the draft and free agency moving forward. But my mind's eye, let's make him feel uncomfortable and make them one-dimensional. Let's defend that run. Let's take Kyren Williams out of this football contest, and let's make Matt Stafford throw it when we want to. If we can do those two kind of things with any kind of regularity, we're going to win this football game, and it's going to be comfortable. You're going to be smiling and, styling and profiling at around 11 o'clock Sunday night.
That would be nice. We always like to do that. Hey, let's talk about what the Lions need to do offensively against this Rams defense. Now, this Rams defense is rock solid, and there's stars on that side of the ball. Aaron Donald, of course, comes to mind immediately. Coach, how do you attack this defense if you're the Detroit Lions?
Well, I have two primary concerns. One is not being able to do what I just explained. Or being able to do it with regularity, that the run game is hitting on us, or we just, Stafford's got all day. And the other would be that these two defensive tackles that we're going to be facing stifle our inside run, that we cannot block them with effective consistency, and we're not able to run the football inside. That, of course, it's our staple. We're banged up. One of our top threats, really our second most productive receiving threat, and one that we've identified many times when Jared Goff is really red hot. His tight end is really clicking. Is in question. Even more than ever, we need to be able to shorten this game, keep John Stafford, off the field, and have our offense on the field, running the football, moving chains, getting us in prime scoring position. And then, of course, okay, cheat. That's when our 6'6" quarterback burns one on somebody. Calculated kind of, stuff. And then, things bunch. And now we can get things going in the flats and, get Amon-Ra doing some things, and maybe get Khalif Raymond or our boy J-Mo, out on a reverse or something like that, and widen things out again, so that here we go, we're able to effectively run the football inside. Now, both of these guys are 30-year-old football players.
And we're talking about Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner, right?
Yeah. I believe, Donald's 32, I think. And
yeah, I think so.
And I believe Turner is 30 years old as well. He's not brand new.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, we talked about our offensive line being, we need to get some great combos on these guys. We're going to have to do some doubling. We have got to be road graders in there. Do we have the men to do it? I think we do. But I am concerned that we're not going to be able to impose ourselves with the inside run well enough to be the Detroit Lions and the type of Detroit Lions, the grit Detroit Lions that can win this football game on Sunday.
Yeah, great points, Coach. Great points, Coach. Brad, how do you attack this Rams defense if you're Ben Johnson?
I think there's a lot of what Andy just went through. I mean, there's hardly anything I can add to that explanation. It was spot on. I'll go back to ball control and actually just not turning it over, right? Like, don't give that offense more chances at scoring, right? Like, we got to win that turnover battle to win playoff football games. So let's just, I think that's a major point to take note of as we're watching Sunday's game.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and that's why you're our coach. We love your explanation. That's a great breakdown. The thing is, this isn't the Rams defense that won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. There were some bigger names. They had Jalen Ramsey on that team, and there was Von Miller was on that team for the playoff run. He was a deadline move. So you don't have all of those names there, but it's a very effective, tough defense. This team is 7-1 in their last 8 games. Now, they started out poorly. Stafford missed a couple of games. He had a hand injury. I watched that game. I think it was against Green Bay. Actually looked pretty bad. I was surprised he came back as quickly as he did. He had a fine season. He's a handful. But I think I truly believe if the Lions can keep pressuring the quarterback the way they've been able to do it over the last 3-4 weeks, Matt Stafford's in for a long day. And I mean a long day. What you don't want to have happen is, if the game's close, I get it. But you want to be up a touchdown going in that fourth quarter. One thing I do fear about number 9 over there is in the fourth quarter, he's money. Now, we got a guy that's money too in number 16, and he can do his thing, especially that 4-minute and 2-minute offense. But I'd really like to see the Lions up, and I really think they will have enough cushion where they're going to be able to control the tempo, control the pace, and be able to play a little more bend but don't break in that fourth quarter. But I don't want to see that happening until later in that, like midway through that fourth quarter. They can ill afford at any point in this game before then to think that it's in hand. And I don't care how many. Go check the film on the New Orleans game and talk to me about big leads. Right? I mean, look at yesterday. Look at yesterday's game in Michigan and Washington. They were up 17-3 and probably should have been up 24-3 at minimum and didn't get there. And then sure enough, it's 17-10 and at the half and Washington's getting the ball back. Guess what? Got a ball game. They allowed them in that game. And I know you were adamantly opposed to some of the play calling their coach in that one at least in that quarter, the second quarter. They allowed them to sneak back in, but of course, Michigan took control in the second half. Let's not give the Rams that opportunity. Let's not get cute. I think Detroit needs to have a mentality going into this game that we're 12-5. We're the NFC North champions. You figure out how to stop us. You want to stop the pass? No problem. We're going to run it down your throat. Oh, you want to stack 7-8 in the box? Okay. Oh, Sam Laporta might not play. That sucks, but we've got a few other weapons too. We got a number 9 on our team still too. He's fast. Put it that way. and St. Brown's going to do his thing. Nakua and Kupp are dangerous. And Nakua's had a huge year, just under 1,500 yards himself. Kupp, comeback season, missed a few games because of the injury at the beginning of the year. Found his way though, 700 plus yards, big second half. A lot of Kieran Williams is the guy who's interesting. Now they don't have, I wouldn't say they have a dynamic running game because it's been decimated by injury, but he's got 1,100 yard season under his belt, and he wasn't the featured back at the beginning of the season. So although I'm not really worried about the Lions stopping the run, I truly think they'll do a nice job of that. But wow, it's gonna be a hell of a game. I agree. I agree with you guys both. Sack numbers are nice, but I would much rather have the inaccurate quarterback because then a lot can spider web out of that. And at the very least, it's going to be a drive killer, and they're not going to be able to score a lot of points if that's the case. So I would definitely much rather take that. I've seen pitchers get nine strikeouts in a game and give up 6 runs because 6 hits, 6 home runs, whatever it is, it can happen. So stats can lie to you a little bit. But you know what? The crowd's going to be hyped. The situation's right. That it's a national TV Sunday night game. That was the time slot. I know I selfishly wanted as a fan just because I thought that that's when everyone was going to be really dialed in and watching. There's no activities going on, and it's still Sunday football. I mean, I watch the Sunday night game every week. I can't say I do that with the Thursday night or Monday night game necessarily because of work, but I will definitely make sure I watch the Sunday night games. But let's talk about how we see this one playing out with predictions. Coach, start with you. How are you seeing this one shaking out?
Well, like I said, I've tried to recenter myself because, there's parts of me that are, just the competitive nature of this, as much as I don't want to make it personal. Because I just can go there for whatever reason, and it's about Stafford, and I'm not gonna go there. That being said, we need to have this just feel uncomfortable for that organization. Now. Not just Sunday at 8. We want to make them feel that way now. I do think one pride in the fans are doing that to a certain degree. I mean, you've got some of these, the more and more I see things on like X and things like on ESPN on those talk shows. And I'm now home at this time of the, at that time of the day when the Hot Take Central comes on or whatever, the Hot Take Hours or whatever you want to call them. With those, getting kids that are out there throwing their 2 cents in. Just where we are in life and how we're a little older. I mean, there's just certain things that, the D line, which is I think like a T-shirt company, put out and made an X tweet or post. That looked very official. That didn't make it look like a Lions one. It wasn't like a fake or something like that, but made it look like that somehow number 9 Detroit Lions Matt Stafford jerseys will not be are banned from Sunday. Okay, number 1, I have worked stadium security. There's no way of doing that. And if you ask that of somebody making about, well, probably now I guess about $12, $13, $14 an hour, yeah. That's a great job, and one of which is not going to be very successful. So yes, Matt Stafford jerseys, I believe, will be welcome in Ford Field. That's not your best choice of jersey, but no, I don't think this is not some homecoming. This is just this is not Justin Verlander returning the pitch against the Tigers, and little montage. I don't think it's in the Lions' best interest to put together some love affair clips of Matt Stafford and his 2-minute drives doing this, that, and the other thing for the Detroit Lions. None of that.
I agree.
None of that. Let's make this adversarial.
Yeah.
And then you know what? At around 11:30, 12 o'clock, we can let that guard down. But we need to make this adversarial. And these kids who are playing here now, they've endured what we had to, when Matt Stafford played with the Detroit Lions. They have not had to endure that. And I'm not saying that, because he was some crap player here. He was great. He is one of the best quarterbacks in Lions history.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I really do feel this is the Jared Goff game. And we've seen some dynamic performances from him, ones where he was lethal. He barely made an uncalculated mistake. Barely made them. I would be really, really surprised if he had or didn't have a game that was not like that. I think it's going to be that way. And I think it's going to be tight. I don't think this is going to be some sort of 17-14 affair. I think, the over is a fair bet. But we will have won our first playoff game since 1991.
That's validation on the season for me in my book.
That's all I need. And that's and I want that, and I believe it's going to happen.
I hear you, Coach. For Brad, what do you got?
Well, I started tonight talking about expectations, and they met them. Winning Sunday is meeting another expectation that I have of this roster.
Yep.
And yes, we can pull back to our history as fans and the torture that we've lived through, but none of that matters. My mind for this team pulls back to the last game of last season. What Jared Goff did at Lambeau Field, what the Detroit Lions did to that Packer team that was doing all they could to make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. With Aaron Rodgers.
Is, if we're pulling from any memory, that's where they need to pull it from, because they can do it. They can absolutely destroy a hot quarterback. They can make the great play calls that Ben Johnson did at Lambeau. Jared Goff can do it. The offensive line can blow some holes, and Kirby Joseph can pick off an errant pass.
He's been known to.
Ife Melifonwu, he didn't have a good game at Green Bay last year, but I guess he has had some good games coming on. So the men who are running out of that tunnel Sunday night, they know they can do this. And we're just there to support what they know they can do. So, yes, I mean, I want this thing to blow up, because I don't know if I can physically take a fourth quarter that's going back and forth mentally. I mean, I'm going to. I'll live through it.
Oh, yeah.
I do want to live through it. But it's going to be close. These are no one's backing into the playoffs here during this game. So go Detroit. We all have to do our part, and I am all for Jared Goff doing what he can do and has done.
Yep, I like it. And guys, I agree with you both. I have the Lions winning this game. I'll even put a score to it. 37-26. I see it. I think it's going to be a close game. I could see the Rams going for 2 and failing, and perhaps maybe in the last 2 or 3 minutes, one of those Kirby Joseph specials happens, Brad, and then it's take a knee and on we go. Don't want to look ahead.
4 touchdowns, 3 field goals.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. What'd you say that again, Coach?
4 TDs, 3 field goals. Is that how we're going to acquire our 37 points?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think there's going to be a couple that stall. Badge is going to have to come up with something.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly got to be good. Field goal wise, he's missed a couple. I know one extra point was blocked. And he missed one last week, Sunday, which was a bit concerning. But it is what it is. He's our guy going in, and we know he can make field goals. He's clutch. So not worried about that, really. Not really worried about anything at this point. The Lions are who they are. Would just like to see Sam Laporta back. I don't know if he's going to play. I'm anticipating he's not. and I still think the Lions will take care of business. CJ Gardner-Johnson, he's back. He had an interception on Sunday, which was cool, at the end of the game. He certainly got a feel for game speed. He played a significant amount of time. I know he wants to play every snap, but Malafon was earned the right to be in that lineup. Certainly, just on his blitzing alone, the guy's been outstanding. But and the Lee McNeil back. James Houston is a question mark. That's not sounding too promising that we might see him. I don't know. They basically haven't had him most of the season, unfortunately, but it would be great to get him back because we know what he can do rushing the passer. So let's go Lions. Sunday Night Football, Rams, Lions, number 3 and number 6 seeds colliding. And we will be talking to you next week, and we will be talking to you about a Lion victory, and we will be previewing the next round's matchup against a team to be named. So for Uber Brad Harrison, Coach Andy Shield, I'm Drew. Take care, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. This has been the Sports Peninsula Podcast. To subscribe to the podcast, simply click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel's homepage and give us a like. You can also follow our audio podcast on multiple platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts, just to name a few. Give us a follow on Twitter. Our handle is @SportsPPodcast to check out our latest releases. Thank you again for watching and for your support. Remember, when you want to hear all about sports in the great state of Michigan, there is only one Sports Peninsula Podcast.